Do. Hello and welcome to another Small Gold live stream. Today is Thursday, September 6, 2018, and tonight's topic: Kazakhstan's gold reserves blow past Saudi Arabia's. We're going to be talking about the gold acquisition of Central Bank of Kazakhstan. But first, let's take a look at the markets today. Gold managed to poke again ahead of 1200. Opened the day below 1200 at around 1197, got all the way up to 1206, and currently is trading in the aftermarket at 1201. Silver also stayed above 14 today. Silver opened around 1416, got as high as 1429, but is currently trading around 1416. Yesterday, I forgot the cryptos until mid-show. We're going to get to them now. Bitcoin had dropped significantly down to about $1,000 from about 7,300 to 6,300 earlier today. It's managed to claw back some of that. It's at 65.30 right now. Ethereum got hit really hard, maybe 20-25%. Was down in the very low 200s, climbed back to about 230. Just a few weeks ago, it was over $400. Bitcoin Cash, which had been above 600, dropped below 500 and is now at 519. And Litecoin, which had been just a few days ago, almost at 70, went down to about 53, 54, is now at 57.43. Well, let's take a look now at the Kazakhstan gold reserves. Now, they report at the end of each month for not the prior month, but the month prior. So on August 31st, they're not going to report the August month. They're going to report the reserves and their foreign exchange position balance sheet for the end of July. And that's what they did on August 31st. Now, currently, they have 326 tons. And what I'm going to do now is show you some charts that indicate that they have been buying gold at a very rapid rate. So there you see your chart of Kazakhstan. And if you go back to January 2015, they only had under 20 tons. And you can see they've added about 125 tons since then. And those tons that tonnage that they've added has moved them from about 28th place back then all the way now into the top 15. July's addition was the largest yet, 160,000 ounces, or almost 5 tons. So now their total tonnage is 326.5865 tons, and that's now ahead of Saudi Arabia's 322.9 tons. And that's also ahead of England's 310 tons. Let's take a look now at where that puts Kazakhstan on the tables here. Now it comes up for you there. This chart will show you where Kazakhstan sits or stands, depending on what you like to say. So India is now number 11th or possibly 10th. It depends whether you count. Turkey counts a lot of the gold that it has in its other banks, and they roll it up into the central bank, but they don't really have 571 tons at the Central Bank of Turkey. So technically, the Central Bank or the Reserve Bank of India, which has 566 tons, actually has more gold than Turkey. But putting that aside, we're more interested now is forget the ECB, because that's not a country. They've got about 505 tons. Taiwan has 424, showing the Chinese like their gold. Portugal, 383. That's pretty surprising that Portugal has 383 tons. And then Kazakhstan, 327 tons. That's ahead of Saudi Arabia's 323. United Kingdom's 310. Here's a shocker. Lebanon has more gold than Spain, the Central Bank of Lebanon. 287 tons. Spain, 282, Austria 280, and Belgium 227 tons in Belgium. Now, Kazakhstan has been adding gold increasing amounts. In 2016, they added about 36 tons. 2017, they added 40 tons. I started tracking Kazakhstan sometime in late 2015, early 2017. Now, this 160,000 ounces was the largest that they've added, and it seems that they're going to continue to add gold to the reserves. And they're one of the few central banks that are actually adding gold. We mentioned the others are Russia and Turkey. And what they all have in common is they all have crappy currencies and they all have domestic gold mining production. Let's take a look at Kazakhstan's gold mining production. Here we go. Now, it is no wonder that Kazakhstan is adding gold when it has the fortune of having a burgeoning gold mining industry. Way back in 2010 or 2009, they had less than 20 tons of gold being produced. They have since ramped that up as of last year to 70, some say 80 tons of gold. I think I got this from the USGS. It might be 77, closer to 80 tons in 2018. So you can see what they're doing is instead of adding 35 tons a year or 40 tons a year, this year they'll probably add 50 tons a year and they'll probably mine 75, 80 tons a year. So it makes sense for them to buy their own gold and add it to reserves, especially since they have a decent reserve position of about 30 billion. Approximately 40 some odd percent, I think it's 41.4% is the most recent reading, of the reserves are in gold, and that'll probably go higher unless the price of gold goes down. We saw how Russia's gold has increased maybe 50 tons over the past 3 or 4 months, but the dollar value of the total gold that they have has actually decreased from about $82 billion to $77 billion because of the decrease in the price of gold. And the same happened to Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan, I think in June, the end of June, had about 44% of its reserves in gold. Now, even though they've added the largest amount ever, in July, it's down to 41% just because the price of gold has gone down. Also, we talked about why not only adding gold makes sense for Kazakhstan because they have gold mining, but we also mentioned they have that very bad currency. And I'm going to show you how bad their currency is compared to gold. Here is the 10-year chart, courtesy of Nick Laird, showing the Kazakhstan tenge. Ever hear of that one? I don't think that's a big seller in international markets. And there you go. 10 years ago, if you had 100,000 tenge in your pocket, strolling around the streets of Almaty in Kazakhstan or wherever you might be in that town or in that country, you could buy an ounce of gold with 100,000 tenge. Today, it would cost you about almost $500 million. No, not half a billion. It would cost you almost 500. No, I'm sorry. Let me take that back. In 2008, if you had 100,000 tenge, you could buy an ounce of gold. Today, if you have 450,000 tenge, you could buy an ounce of gold. It almost cost you $500,000 tenge to buy an ounce of gold in Kazakhstan currency. So you can see they don't lose anything by buying that gold from their domestic mining supply. It's the best thing they can do. Instead of holding tenge as reserves or dollars, they just take their tenge, they go to their domestic mining supply, they dump that gold in. As you can see, versus the tenge, they've increased the price of gold 4.5 times, which means they've maintained that value in their reserves. Now, just to make the point, it's not just Kazakhstan that does it. The reason we've mentioned, we're not going to show Russia today, but let's take a look at Iran. Iran's got the same problem as Kazakhstan. In 2008, they've got a really weird currency called the rial. And I mean weird because of the name, but weird because of the amount of rial that you need. You needed about 6 million. I think that's 50. Yeah, you needed about 5 or 6 million real to buy an ounce of gold. Gold has gone up tenfold. You now need 50 million real to buy an ounce of gold in Iran. So this also highlights that the time to buy your gold in these countries is not now. You've already missed the boat. You can't buy too much gold. Your real isn't worth that much. The time to have bought it was a long time ago. So if you have concerns about your currency and you live in a country with a suspect currency, it does make sense to save your wealth in gold. As you can see from the Iranian rial, if you had held on to gold, in 2008, you bought your 1 ounce at 6 million. It's now worth 50 million. Same with the Kazakhstan tenge. Let's take another look at another one. Let's look at the Turkish lira and see what that looks like over the past 10 years. Well, it looks like you used to be able to buy an ounce of gold in 2008 for about 1,200 lira. Let's see if it comes up on your screen there. And today, you need 8,000 lira to buy an ounce of gold. So an 8-fold increase in the price of gold, versus the Turkish lira. So clearly, gold performs well against emerging market currencies, and it makes sense for emerging market countries to hold a portion of the reserves in gold, especially if they can get that gold from their domestic mining supply. It doesn't mean that Turkey is going to crush the dollar, or they know what's coming. Yeah, they know what's coming. They know what's coming against their own currency. I think people misinterpret. Central banks are buying gold. That is all I need to know. Not so. You probably are not, if you live in a country like, let's say, Germany, the United States, Canada, you have less of a reason to buy gold than someone who lives in Turkey, Iran, or Kazakhstan. Now, maybe in the future that will change, and that's another reason why people buy gold, because they think eventually all the fiat currencies will get hit, and that's probably not a bad way of looking at it. However, it does, as you can see, it hits these other currencies first. The idea that these currencies, the BRICS, have had it, that they're going to crush their dollar, no. They're getting crushed as it is. Now, eventually, it may move right up the fiat food chain, and it may hit the euro and the Canadian dollar, the Australian dollar, the Japanese yen, and the US dollar, probably in something like that order. But currently, that's not the case. And the reason that these countries are buying gold is to try to offset some of the issues they have with their currencies. And thankfully, as we mentioned, other than Iran, they have some gold in their backyard that they can mine and add to reserves. So that's it for today. I just want to go through the Central Bank of Kazakhstan, and they are smart, but they're not smart for the reasons you think they're smart. They're smart because why not? If you have gold in your backyard and you have a currency that no one wants and you can buy it, I don't see why you wouldn't. It makes total sense for the Central Bank of Kazakhstan to be adding gold, has added gold to reserves for 70 months in a row. I'd imagine Russia is buying the same thing. They've got gold in their backyard. What they might do eventually is stop selling. I think the last 2 years, Russia has bought about 78-80% of its domestic gold mining production, about 225 out of 300 tons they've added. They might just start adding all 300 tons. Who knows? We'll see what happens. But keep an eye. I'll keep an eye on these central banks. But just to put it into perspective, the big Kazakh gold buy of 160,000 ounces or 5 tons of gold in July 2018, in the overall scheme of things, it's a spit in the bucket. 5 tons out of 3,600 tons mined annually, including what's mined in Kazakhstan, is not a lot. It's symbolic if you're tracking the emerging markets, you're figuring out what they're doing, you're tracking currency. The other thing is, you notice that just the mere fact that they add gold, or you would think the fact that, in a sense, the Kazakhstan tenge is now 40 some odd percent arguably backed by gold because their reserves are 40 some odd percent in gold. So this also highlights that having gold as a country does not act as a huge hedge as it might act in your own personal portfolio. I mean, look at Venezuela. They had a lot of gold. Now they don't. I mean, it helps. It buys them a few months. But even a country like Russia, the Central Bank of the Federation of Russia has $77 billion worth of gold. And that's 2,000 tons. That's the 5th largest hoard in the world. And even that probably would not protect them in any meaningful way against a significant collapse. That's not going to hurt them to have it, but it's not the same thing for somebody who has in their own portfolio some gold that offsets their, let's say, their stock portfolio. All right, let's see if we got any questions. I'll have these charts up tomorrow on the website so you can look at them better. And thank you to Nick Laird for the charts that he made on the currencies versus gold. He tracks them all. He has like 160 currencies versus gold. Very good service. Goldchartsrus.com. All right, let's see what we got on the dashboard here. All right. From Holland, Vorza, good evening. Hello. Recently, there was this interview about the supposed extra 21 trillion. Did you ever get a video on something like that, or is that BS? Greg Hunter, Jim Sinclair, Bill Halter. I don't know. I've heard there was something about extra 21 billion, and there was something Catherine Austin Fitts did. She did research. I just haven't looked into it, so I don't have anything to add there. Yeah, there is Dr. Mark Skidmore, Catherine Austin Fitts. I don't know. I can't comment on it either way. I haven't done any. I've only heard about it. Esper Hunter, has the mug market crashed like everything else is? No. You see, mugs maintain their value. And I suggest you get your small gold mug today, whether you get yourself an espresso mug, small gold to go mug, travel mug, or the small gold classic or super classic mugs. Mugs are money, period. You can put stuff in mugs. You can barter with mugs. You can put your barter items in the mugs. You can put Mountain House in a mug. So they are a great prepper item. They're a good defensive weapon. You can open carry mugs in many places, so get your mugs. Just got it, by the way. What about the same timeline for silver in Iran? Oh, you want the price of silver versus the Iranian tenge? Is that what you're asking about? Let me see if Nick does that. I generally don't. Yeah, I'm sure they do. No, they do. I'll get that for you in a second. I'll show it on the screen here. So I want to go to currencies, and we'll look at the 160 currencies. Let's take a look at the price. Maybe he only does it in gold, but let's see. Let's look at Iranian rial. That's in gold. And he doesn't do it in silver. He only does some of them. Oh, there it is. No, hold on. There it is. He does have it. Let me copy it and put it up for you. Not as good. Not as good. Let me, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put them both up on the screen. Obviously, it's not as good because silver, since 2008, is about the same place it's been since, what was I going to say? Silver in US dollars is about the same price as it's been since 2008 today. So they're both about the same. Silver price in Iranian rial. We're going to get that up on the screen for you here. All right, so let's take a look. Maybe I could try to get both. You compare the Iranian rial with the, let's see if in gold versus the Iranian rial versus silver. If I can't get them both up, first I'm going to show you the silver. Here's the silver. All right. So the silver, when it gets up there on the screen for you, you'll see is I got back since 2014. It was 250,000 rial for 1 ounce of silver. Now it's 600,000. Okay, you can see that. And let me just go back and do a 10-year. I'm not going to put it up on the chart. 10 years ago, in 2008, it was 150,000. So wasn't much lower. And it's gone up to 600,000. We saw with the gold, there was a tenfold increase in the Iranian rial versus gold. And in silver, it's like 250, 500. It's like 2.5 times. It's not as much. And that makes sense. Also, I would imagine gold is far more prized in Iran than silver is. I would say that's the same way around most of the world. Clearly, silver is not even close to having the allure that gold has in China or India for sure. I think in the United States is probably the one country where there's actually an idolatry of silver that doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. All right, let's see if any other questions here. But that was a good question, Esper Hunter. Thanks. Yeah, I'm going to dig deeper into that service and look at the price of silver. Maybe we'll do some stories on silver versus major currency. I actually do a story once a year. I used to do it quarterly on gold versus the major currencies, and I also had the silver in there as well. I didn't do it this year at all, but I used to do. If you go back in the archives, I did used to cover silver and gold versus major currencies, not these minor currencies like Iranian rial and Kazakhstan tenge. You probably need about 7.5 trillion tens to buy a mug and fill it with silver. That's probably true. I haven't shipped anything to Kazakhstan. All my orders have been in the US, Canada, Australia, and Europe. US Mint is our silver minted coins, says Busy Mountain. Yes, and if you were listening last night, we did cover that. Slowest sales of silver in years, and the U.S. Mint cannot get silver. And we discussed why that was. That the U.S. Mint is the... They get their silver blanks from third parties like Sunshine Minting, and then they stamp them with the silver eagle on the back and the Lady Walking Liberty on the front. So I attribute that's akin to... It's not a silver shortage. It's more like when there's a hamburger shortage. There's plenty of beef, but it hasn't been molded into burgers. It just means that you're not going to be able to eat for a while until they actually take the beef out of the packages, grind it up, make it into patties, and slap it on the grill. That's basically where we are today because the U.S. Mint doesn't keep silver at the mint in a form ready to stamp Silver Eagles on it. Who knows why they did it that way? One day I want to get on Ed Moy. He's a former U.S. Head of the U.S. Treasury, not U.S. Mint, and ask him about that because it doesn't make sense. They should at least keep a certain number of planchets available, but they don't. They outsource that to a third party. Whereas I own Sandstrom Gold. They have a big project in Turkey. Kind of dodgy now, but I think it'll pan out in the end. They're a solid streaming company, says Vorza. You build them business models on streamers on paper is much better than a mine because they take none of the mining risk. They have the financial risk. They lend the money to the miners, and in exchange for lending the money, they get an agreement to buy the gold or silver production from the mine at a price far lower than the current market price. Yeah, thanks for answering it. Maybe interesting thing to look into. There's only so much I can look into. I try to stick to the gold and the silver and the other economics. If Catherine Austin Fitts and Dr. Skidmore and Holter and Sinclair are spending a lot of time on it, I have to say more power to them. Division of Labor, I just can't double check their work, and I'm not really interested in doing that. Now, if they're talking about gold and silver and there's certain numbers, I may double check those. But going into the Treasury numbers, I don't have the time to do that. Yes, the U.S. Mint ran out of eagles. Doesn't mean much at all, but I guess still funny. It just means that, the mint really should be more on top of these things. Because, like Busy Mountain says, it's not like... It was understandable in 2015. They sold 47 million Silver Eagles. They were kind of caught flat-footed. They never sold that much before, although the year before they did sell 44 million. But right now, they're not selling anything. And just because they had a couple of weeks of big sales, all of a sudden they're out and they didn't plan for it. It's bad planning. And if you could say, well, maybe it's the problem of the three suppliers, well, then bad planning on their part, too. All right, Vaz, you're going to go to good night all. Thank you, Mr. Lewis. It says thank you. All right. Yes, wish we didn't have any miners in my portfolio, only streamers. Don't want to sell any miners now. Most of them obviously down. Yep. All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight. If you've got any further questions, you can save them for tomorrow night. If you do want to buy a Small Gold mug, you just go straight to the Small Gold website. Now, remember, on the Small Gold website, when you order your Small Gold mug, I can ship out from Small Gold headquarters the classic and the super classic mug, and I'm going to show you those pictures. They come with free shipping, and tonight I will send them out with a free Small Gold Game Changer eraser. If, however, You don't want the small gold mug. I don't know why you wouldn't. The small gold classic or super classic mug. But you want the, I can see why, you might want the small gold to go mug, the travel mug, or the small gold espresso mug. You have to order those through the small gold store. And I'll give you the link for that. I cannot put in, because I'm not delivering those or shipping those out myself, I can't put in the small gold game changer eraser, but you can still order directly from the small gold site there. And also, you see on your screen, if you enjoy these podcasts, they're on every night at 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time here on YouTube. Consider becoming a small gold patron or donating via PayPal, Bitcoin, or Litecoin. That's all on your screen there. And also, if you've missed tonight or you're just joining in, you can check this out by going back to YouTube and starting from the beginning. It'll be up as soon as this is over. And then also you could check it out on BitChute. There's a small gold channel there. Minds.com, Gab.ai, Bit.tube, and Facebook, Twitter, and Google+. But the best place to go is Small Gold Central, which is smallgold.com. I want to thank everyone once again, and we'll see you tomorrow night at 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Thanks very much.